Minecraft's 2026 April Fools Snapshot is here, and we're going to look at the source code behind it. These are the only items that we have available to us, and we'll get back to these. These are items. Let's unpack this. Punching grass gave us a dirt block. This is a living block entity, and these items are action items. And right now we're using highlight, which highlights living blocks in the world. So we're going to check out living block first, then look at the action item class and the registered action items. I'm using WinMerge here to compare the decompilation of the previous version of Minecraft to this current April Fools version. And I just want to show you that nothing changed as far as the 3D rendering system. Everything we're seeing here is built off of entity logic and some pretty neat physics programming. Living block begins as a pure entity, but this is 1400 lines long. There's actually so much going on for living blocks that we have an entire dedicated package for them. And this is interesting. We see something called cognition, action, agency probe, desire, desires, hopes and dreams. So when a living block gets interrupted, we stop desiring anything of our hopes and dreams. So this whole time, Buddy has had hopes and dreams and we're just dragging them along. So I'm looking for movement. I found rolling movement. Now I also found thunder hit. So when lightning is striking a living block, we're setting the block state to be a shroom light. So that just flipped way off, and it's a shroom light now. So that's weird. We can also see bouncing movement here. Pogo scale difference, pogo scale target. So besides rolling movement, we have bouncing movement. And we can look at the hierarchy here. For anything implementing movement strategy, we see floating movement, bouncing movement, rolling movement, and water floating movement, which is actually a subclass of rolling movement instead of floating movement. So that's kind of weird. And there's also this player chase the skies. So the leash holder instance player, leash to player dot size is greater than or equal to 3. So if 3 or more blocks are leashed to the player, then we ignore fall damage for the player. Oh, balloons. Oh, whoops. What is it? List block balloons. What counts as a balloon? Oh, okay. Wool begins floating. So with these on a leash, it's basically slow falling. Okay, our gravity is just lowered. So that's cool. I'm never getting those back. Okay, on to rolling movement. We have different types of rolling movement. We have the default kind of rolling around. We have step up, climb, and idle cling. We have a subclass of data, which allows us to save the data to the entity for which kind of movement it was using last. So the subclass data of rolling movement is specifically for encoding rolling movement data. Bouncing movement also has a class data for saving the bounce data. So we see the difference here. We see the moving type that we just went over, the position that we're at, and the direction that we're moving to. So the data for rolling movement includes move step, and that's tracking the move type we went over, the position the block is in, and the direction that it's moving to. We also save how much longer it's going to be moving that direction, and if it failed any attempt. For bouncing movement, we're tracking is the block in the air, is it able to perform another bounce or a jump, the position that it's bouncing to, and then we have stretch cooldown. Stretch cooldown is updated as we're moving towards a target. So movement happens per tick, so this is set for 4 ticks since it's updated every tick, stretch cooldown. And this happens only after ready to jump again. You want to know what uses the bounce animation? I'll give you a hint. It's this cute little guy here. Well, actually, it's all tools. So if we search for bouncing movement, let me actually do new bouncing movement. We see there's only a few occurrences of this. We see it in living block types and in bouncing movement for constructing the data to save. So if we go to living block types, we see flint and steel, which is by itself. We look for more occurrences, and we see living block types dot preset tool, which is the only other usage of bouncing movement. So melee, mining, and smelting tools, as well as the flint and steel, will bounce around. Let's look at how items have changed. So one of the first things I just saw was that the bow item has no durability now. You see the fishing rod also had durability removed. Our shield has changed a bit. Actually, it hasn't changed at all. They just cleaned up the import. We see this huge section of added code. Most of this here is action items, which are these items you're seeing in your inventory, but we also see new iron trap and copper trap items. So if you give yourself one of those, if it rolls on you, you get caged up. So let's go over the action items. All of these stack to 1, so they're non-stackable. Only the follow action has a data component attached during registration, so we can check this out. Some of them, like move, attack, build, and group, have attributes added. So we have group action, move action, attack action, move action. So our move action has the same attributes as our build action. So that's interesting. So we have a block interaction range. We have an entity interaction range. We only see that on move and build. So we can select the block from super far away and then bring it over to us that way. It's just taking its time. Still on the way, don't worry. Nice. We can view the hierarchy of action item here and we'll see these. So we can see command action item is a superclass of move, follow, attack, and build. Then we also have punch, crafting, and group. Okay, but highlight is still missing. And you might have noticed why. It's just a pure action item. So in player.java, we see items that highlight action being used, and we also see living block renderer items that highlight action being used. So in the player, we just have a list of the action items. In living block renderer, we're doing compute outline color, and this is literally just checking if the item in the main hand of our player is that highlight action. So whenever we have that selected, then we calculate this outline. And you might see it's actually pulsing subtly. It gets darker and then lighter and darker again. So we see here color lerper, get lerped color, type highlight, and this uses the tick count, get game time. So this is typically a long. Yeah, this is a long. So this is a long that's being cast to a float for some reason, but that's really weird. We also see a section for the living block group. The punch item is kind of basic. It is just for attacking blocks and hurting living blocks. Nothing crazy here. Let's check out follow. This is where it gets a little more interesting. We start using actions and commands here. So we mess around with the hopes and dreams of our blocks. If the player's in spectator, then we return false for the action, so we don't do anything. Otherwise, we do this dot action. We check if the player is an instance of server player, so we're ensuring that we do this on the logical side so that the client doesn't have any control over actual logic. Then we're running apply command, which takes in the player, a target position, and an action, which is a consumer of a living block. So then we apply the command. So this is coming from the superclass command action item. So we saw that we could group blocks, and so we're iterating over every block in the list of commanded blocks. The command that we're applying here is this hopes and dreams.desire, desires.approach, target following entity. So this is making sure that our living block actually follows the player. See desires.approach here. So this is an interface, not an enum. So we see attack, protect, approach, mine, build, and these start as blink desires. We could look through all the different behaviors too. Absorb snow, act on desire, annoying click-clack behavior, avoid being in the way of crafting. What is this used by? This annoying click-clack. Living block types, we'll just search for it there. Oh, the lever. Oh yeah, it just likes to click on its own. So we have annoying click-clack behavior, and then on interact, flip lever interaction. So we can still interact with it. Let me see. Yeah, we can flick it ourselves. Cool. But the click-clack behavior, living block behavior type, annoying click-clack behavior. Yeah, that's what we're looking at. So interval is every 10 ticks. So if the time between our last triggered tick was at least 10 ticks, then we do this tick behavior. So we're getting the block state and block position of the entity itself, which is a living block. And we'll see if it's turning on or off, and it randomly spawns particles with a 25% chance. And we have a 10% chance to move to a different state, and then that's when the sound is played. Combine its buildable entity behavior, block matcher, combine into copper golem behavior, weather info, combine into house behavior. What? We have a smelting behavior and smelt nearby living block behavior used by the furnace, blast furnace, smoker, campfire, soul campfire. That makes sense. And of course we have the trap player behavior that we saw for the copper trap and iron traps. So there were a couple changes to different items here. We see minecart item, mace item, items in general, ender eye item, crossbow item. Now spawn egg item had a one-liner, one-word change from private to public or spawning a mob. So I thought that was kind of weird, and I'm kind of wondering if we're going to see this change in the next update as well. That's not an April Fools update. We do see it being used in living block mob container behavior, so that's kind of interesting. So for shulker boxes, we have this living block mob container behavior. How am I supposed to put anything in? Oh, it can eat and burp. Interesting. Oh, yep, okay. Oh, that's cool. Okay, so if I open you, I have sticks here, regular item stack, toss it out in the world. Oh my, okay, that's pretty cool. I wonder, oh, they're all highlighted too. I wonder if that's, well, most of them are highlighted. That's interesting. Nice. We're inside of build action. This logic gets run on the server or logical side. So all of this in build, this is the quote unquote command that we're running through build target, desires build, and we're calling to build here. We have this level event 4000. So if we go to the level event class, we see particles, glue, living block. Level is an abstract class. So this level event is actually implemented on server level. And this broadcasts an event using client bound level event packet. Eventually the client receives it and we do case 4000, which is that particles, glue, living block. And this is how the server tells the client to spawn particles when those blocks are being placed back into the world. Our group action is pretty straightforward. When we attack a living block, we use set block group, gather the current group of the living block and our selected group. So this is the color you see changing when we're right clicking. And you can see the logic for that in use and use on. We're using the toggle method. And you see the logic for if we're crouching or the shift key is down, we either go backwards or forwards with the color cycle. There's 8 distinct groups, one of them being none or an unselected group. This is the default. So we check if the player can control this living block target. And if we selected a group besides the default, so we selected a color, then we set the owner to the current player and then update the group settings. The crafting action is where it gets a little more complex. We're spawning a separate entity here. So we have this crafting grid entity. So we have some static methods to make sure that we can place the entity and then to create the entity and place it in the world. So for the placement that's here, we're making sure we're not colliding with anything else and that we're on top of solid faces. There's no physics happening on the entity, so it's not affected by gravity. We saw create at earlier, which calls back to create here. So we set the owner to the player, create the size, so we know if this is a 2x2 or 3x3 grid. We have set position, and then we're offsetting that slightly upwards. We update the rotation, we place it into the world and fire a game event. We do this init method. So we have our facing direction and we're getting clockwise. So we have to the right and then the opposite of where we're facing. And we have this get top left function and we have this illegal state exception. That's hilarious. So I said the crafting action was more complex because we're creating a sub entity. Well, that crafting grid sub entity also creates that hovering item, which is another sub entity. We see that registered here. So these hovering items are created when the result of a recipe is not null. And this occurs automatically during the tick function. So we have this try craft method. So this takes a boolean for dry run. So that's just to get the result of it. Whereas if it's not a dry run, then we actually trigger the recipe being crafted. One of the last things we'll touch on, the living block renderer itself. We have create render state and extract render state. The living block render state extends entity render state, which is pretty common. This holds an item stack render state, a block model render state, along with the current block state we have selected, the current rotation of that living block, whether it has rotation, whether it has a red overlay for like if we're hurting it, how long it's dying for, so it plays that little animation, the pogo scale for the tool items and the flint and steel that we saw earlier, and the rotation pivot. We create a new render state with a bunch of default values. This is pretty common. We pass in item model resolvers and block model resolvers. I'm pretty sure this stuff is built into the game already. When we extract the render state, we use compute outline, which we saw earlier. We get the current block state of the entity, the current item stack of the entity. If the item is a block item, we use the block model resolver. Otherwise, we use the item model resolver. And the most interesting thing, extract rotation. So if we're using rolling movement, we apply all of our rotations. This also has our rotation pivot here being set equal to our bounding box offset. So this is the pivot point of the rotations. So state.has rotation, if this is instance of rolling movement, if that's true, we call to entity.get rotation. Even though this is a get, it seems like it's updating values. So this is pretty strange. We get the bounding box of the living block. We create a new bounding box builder. We get the size of our bounding box. We rotate the corners of our cube. Just going through WinMerge again, we can see a couple things that have changed that might actually bleed over into the next update. We see dispenser here. It looks like they updated this to hold a lot more of the dispenser behaviors. The demo mode actually got an update in this version. We see a change to using the player action packet. Server level has a change. This includes adding a house forcer and wither forcer. We can check out house forcer here. We see create house and then how it sets the blocks and then sets the trigger for the house being built. So we saw this earlier, this combined into house behavior. So this happens for doors, iron doors, crimson doors, copper doors, and all the wood doors. So what this does, those doors as living block entities will check in a specified area around it, and they're looking for blocks that are tagged under builds into house. If we look at builds into house.json, we see bamboo, bamboo mosaic, and a bunch of other blocks as well. And specifically here, we need to make sure that this list of entities that matches that builds into house tag is greater than or equal to 23. So I'm going to do exactly 23 bamboo mosaic. And that happened instantly. I didn't expect it to happen instantly, but there you go. Wither forcer is a bit different. Everything is happening here in this create wither method. So we have a search radius of 16, and we can see that used here for this block pause, spiral around. So we started an origin point and then spiral out from it to search for blocks. We started in the center, and we created a list of winding block positions around this center that keep spiraling outwards. Now we're going down into the world towards bedrock from the ground level, and we use can wither replace block, which is just making sure that it's an open area. So we go to the very lowest position possible that is still an open block to replace. Now we're actually getting to check if we can place the wither in the position that we're at. So a wither skeleton skull is here on the ground. We go down until we touch the ground, and then we check this area to see if we can place a wither there, if all those blocks are replaceable, and that we can spawn the wither here. So if that is possible, then we clear the space for the wither, making sure the position for the heads is open. Then we see place wither structure. This again makes sure that the center block is soul sand, the crossbar is soul sand, and then it places the wither skeleton skulls into the world as usual to spawn a wither. I could see this change bleeding into the next version. We have wake up all players under server level, and this was changed from waking up all living entities to waking up just all players. Server players have some extra save data for their last selected group. We have this change of resetting a stat, but now we're not allowed to reset the stat of total world times. This is a much cleaner shorthand for this. That's pretty nice. We have living blocks replacing item entities here. Now we have a ton of changes in world. Pretty much every entity changed that has an item interaction. So allays could pick up item entities. Now they can pick up living blocks. We see that in pick up item, and you'll see similar changes all across the animal subpackage here. The ender dragon and end crystal are a little different here. This is just an import change. We're still doing level.explode. The ender dragon can be hurt by living blocks. This is interesting. So the wither boss, living entity selector. So it used to check that the entity type is not a wither friend and that the target is attackable. Now we're checking that it's not a wither friend and that it's not an armor stand. So that's a little strange. I feel like we could have just thrown that entity type armor stand into that same tag. We see perform ranged attack has changed where it can now target entities. I'm assuming this is so withers can actually target your items and destroy them. That's the brunt of it. There were quite a lot of changes. There were a couple things that might bleed over into the next version, which can make sense. Most of this is just a one-off for this, which either way is still really cool. There's a lot to learn here too if you're interested in turning this into a mod. I actually created Flotator, a mod based on something from a previous April Fools Snapshot. A lot you can learn. You can see how to structure things, how Minecraft would do things. Even if it's a one-off thing, just prototyping something, it's really nice to get a feel for how other developers do things. And with Minecraft's code now being unobfuscated, we can pretty much just read through it however we want to. It's a really big game changer for people just getting into modding or trying to learn about software development. Thank you for watching the video. Thanks to our channel members, and I'll see you next time.